Yeah,
who was quote-unquote fired by Trump yesterday. That is in dispute whether Donald Trump actually has the authority to fire him. Even some people on the right will say he doesn't have the authority because of Humphrey's executor, which is a case I know we'll get into. But they're trying to push that into the Supreme Court, like many of these battles, which are intentionally designed to test sitting precedent.
Right. There's supposed to be 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats on the FTC. Trump just fired 2 of the Democrats who were Senate confirmed. Like you said, quote unquote, fired. One of them is Commissioner Bedoya. He's a breaking points guy.
And drop site.
And drop site. And so he's going to be on the show later today talking about, what his approach to the FTC was and what it means that now there will be only actually 2 Republicans because they haven't even confirmed the third, and why, which faction within the Trump coalition may have driven this move.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting conversation, so very happy to have him here. Let's begin with Russia. So we can put A0 up on the screen. This is a New York Times headline just about sort of a TikTok, everything that we know so far about this deal. As the New York Times says, Putin agreed on Tuesday during a phone call with Trump to temporarily halt strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, according to the Kremlin. That fell short of the unconditional 30-day ceasefire that Ukraine had already agreed to at the urging of the Trump administration. They reportedly spoke, according to the Kremlin again, for more than 2 hours. Mr. Trump, the Times continues, has stated his desire to broker a truce as quickly as possible, while Putin has seemed to be seeking more concessions. Zelensky replied on Tuesday evening that Putin had, quote, effectively rejected the proposal for a full ceasefire backed by the U.S. and Ukraine. Now, Trump sat down with Laura Ingraham for an interview on Fox News last night, where we learned a little bit more about how he saw that call yesterday. This is A1. We'll roll Trump on Laura Ingraham from the White House.
Russia has the advantage, as you know. They have encircled about 2,500 soldiers. They're nicely encircled, and that's not good. And we want to get it over with. Look, we're doing this. There are no Americans involved. There could be if you end up in World War III over this, which is so ridiculous. But, strange things happen. And I think we had a great call. It lasted almost 2 hours. Talked about a lot of things and toward getting it to peace. And we talked about other things also.
Was there? Here's an interesting exchange between Ingraham and Trump, actually, about what the Kremlin said after the call regarding aid to Ukraine. Let's take a look at this, A2.
Negotiables mentioned by Putin. It was reported that I think the Kremlin media actually stated that he demanded an immediate cessation of aid to Ukraine in order to get to this multi-step deal.
No, he didn't. We didn't talk about aid, actually. We didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about a lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
So that's Trump directly disputing the Kremlin's report of what happened on the call. And just lastly, let's roll this clip of Donald Trump talking about Russia and economic power. This is this should be A3. Next clip here.
China needs us in terms of trade very badly, but we have to straighten out the deficit. We have now more than $1 trillion deficit with China. It's not even believable. And we're going to be doing something about that. And with Russia, they would like to have some of our economic power.
Finally, Ryan, let's put how Donald Trump reported on Truth Social about the call on the screen. This is the next element. He says, quote, my phone conversation today with President Putin of Russia was a very good and productive one. We agreed to an immediate ceasefire on all energy and infrastructure with an understanding that we will be working quickly to have a complete ceasefire and ultimately an end to this very horrible war. Continues to say it never would have started if he were president. Many elements of a contract for peace were discussed, including the fact that thousands of soldiers are being killed, and both Putin and Zelensky would like to see it. And the process is now in full force and effect. But Ryan, interestingly, while the process does clearly seem to be unfolding, full force might not be the best descriptor. If you're Trump, it's one way to spin it, but might not be the best descriptor, given the way that Zelensky responded to news from the call yesterday.
Well, you can tell Trump felt pretty good about how it went because if you notice, there was only one word in all caps in that Truth Social, and it was end. He's going to end the war. Obviously, lots of exclamation points, but that's what you're going to get.
Of course.
You can kind of check his emotional register by mapping it to the number of all caps statements. If it's shot through with all caps, like he is feeling besieged and angry, and how dare people be doing these things to him. when all he wants is peace for the world. So in that sense, it seems like he feels like he's getting somewhere. They also, he also talked about something that he understands, which is sports and entertainment, as through the bilateral cultural exchange of joint hockey games. And
this is A5.
Put this one up. Put A5 in March 2022. The NHL told the KHL, forget it. Like, we're not partnering with you guys. You can't invade Ukraine. And they've been kicked out of the Olympics. The Russian agents weren't allowed to work with the NHL teams anymore. You may or may not know, ice hockey is a rather big deal over in Russia. And so Trump here is floating the possibility of thawing that, to use a terrible pun.
Wow.
I didn't do that on purpose. But after I got there, I'm like, look, this is what we got to go.
It's Dad Joke Wednesday, I guess.
This is accidental dad joke.
That's actually more like bad news anchor joke.
Bad news anchor
Someone's
joke.
writing the teleprompter script. Yeah.
I just kind of slipped onto that one. So the problem here that the U.S. is facing, as Trump clearly articulated to Zelensky in the White House, is that we don't have any cards. Like he says he doesn't. He told Zelensky he doesn't have any cards. The U.S. really doesn't have any cards either, except for the economic power.
Right.
Which, by the way, can we just underscore the irony here that Trump wants to destroy our trade relations with Canada, Mexico, Europe, everyone else around the world, except for Russia.
Right.
Kind of hilarious.
Yeah, it was funny.
Okay, whatever. So the problem is...
Well, especially because doesn't he blame the lifting of sanctions of Nord Stream 2, and many people on the right do, myself included, the Biden administration's lifting of sanctions on Nord Stream 2 is one of the key factors that pushed Putin to invade Ukraine when he did.
Yeah, one of the many incoherent, I think, approaches where Trump is both uber hawkish towards Russia and also then a dove when it comes to war. Like, he wants confrontation right up until the edge.
Right.
That he doesn't want war. But then he says that Putin was justified in the invasion because of the hawkishness of U.S. foreign policy. It's like, well, wait a minute, you're one of the most hawkish. Never mind. So Putin has a bunch of demands that are rooted in the fact that they are winning. And that is the fundamental structural problem that Trump is facing in trying to wrap this up immediately. So we can put this up on the screen. The conditions that Putin is insisting on, the key condition is the one that Trump says they didn't even talk about. Complete cessation of foreign military aid and sharing intelligence information with Kyiv. Hopefully they're recording these conversations, because if historians are going to rely on the competing words of Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump to get an accurate rendition of how the conversation went, God help us.
He said.
God help the historians. So then the second one, Putin says he wants to stop the forced mobilization in Ukraine and the rearmament of armed forces. So stop drafting people and stop arming Ukraine. It's a pretty huge demand.
Yep.
And then any settlement should be complex, stable, and long-term in nature and must take into account the absolute need to eliminate the root causes of the crisis. It must also consider the legitimate interests of Russia in the area of security. So the easy part of that is, that means kind of no NATO. What it's subtly suggesting is that they don't just want the area that they currently hold, but they want, deeper into eastern Ukraine, which their argument is, you can either give it to us or we're going to take it. And if we take it, it's going to be bloody, and we're going to take a lot. We're going to take a lot more with it. And so, basically, he is saying that if you're going to give up, we're turning Ukraine into a complete vassal state that we can basically manipulate, politically from Russia, which is, in other words, it would be like a country in our sphere of influence. Like, this is, that's how roughly we would handle Guatemala or something along those lines. So, how much Trump cares about this versus how much the kind of U.S. deep state cares about this, I guess would indicate whether or not the U.S. is going to be willing to capitulate to this. On the other hand, the encirclement that he talked about is very real. And this is the other thing that Putin is talking about. He's like, what about these guys? So we're like encircling these guys. we're about to capture them. So if we do a ceasefire,